Thanks for tuning in to Red Belt Radio. The following episode is scheduled for one fall. I'm Jason, and this show is dedicated to World Wonder Ring Stardom. Today I'm covering the best and worst of Stardom's upcoming Goddess Tag League, which begins on October 15th, 2023. I'll be using a tier list to do so, with some of the criteria for this list including power level, status in the company, and overall booking this year. The goal is to determine which two teams are the strongest and which two teams are the weakest on paper. Naturally, this won't tell us who might actually win the tournament, but it will let you know who to keep an eye out for. If you find these transmissions valuable, please give this a like, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment to let me know what you think. My tier list is very straightforward. It focuses primarily on the power level of each wrestler, using various championships in Stardom as a metric. D tier is the bottom of the barrel, the jobber tier. This is reserved for wrestlers who we typically expect to be losing a lot of their matches. C tier is the future tier, where current and recent Future of Stardom champions tend to find themselves. B tier is the goddess and artist tier, usually populated by various tag team champions. A tier is the white belt tier, which includes wrestlers who are strong enough to headline shows, but usually act as the co-main to the wrestlers in S tier, which is the red belt and IWGP tier. The IWGP and New Japan Strong titles are hanging out in this tier as well, at least for now. When determining the strength of the tag teams in the Goddess League, I place more emphasis on the team's weakest member than I do on the team's strongest member. This is because tag matches in Stardom often boil down to who in the equation can take a loss and not take a hit to their stock value. To reiterate, tag matches in Stardom are often defined by the individual most likely to take a pinfall, not the person who is more strongly booked. This means that if a team is comprised of one S-tier wrestler and one C-tier wrestler, I will assign more weight in the direction of the weaker C-tier wrestler, which affects the team's final ranking as a result. One last disclaimer here. These placements are very subjective, and they are not personal attacks against any of the wrestlers. Let's now look at the worst of the worst, starting with the second worst team. The second worst team in this year's Goddess Tag League is the Blue Goddess team of Ami Sourei and Yuna Mizumori. I've placed Ami Sourei in C tier, as she is a recent Future of Stardom champion. While technically she is also a former Goddess champion, those belts were obtained through a controversial countout, and Ami held the Future title for a longer and more convincing reign overall. Sadly, as entertaining and cool as she is, Yuna Mizumori has not been able to escape from the dark abyss that is D tier. Throw in the fact that these two have no shared faction or refined chemistry that I'm aware of, and you've got a recipe for disaster on your hands. This team receives a D tier ranking. This brings us to our number one worst team. The worst team in this year's Goddess Tag League is the Blue Goddess team of Saya Iida and Hanako. I currently have both of the wrestlers on this team positioned in D tier, the jobber tier. This might change if Saya Iida can manage to secure the New Blood tag belts, but that is probably a story for another time. As things currently stand, both Saya Iida and Hanako are facing a massive uphill climb, and I'm not expecting them to get terribly far. D plus D equals D, and therefore this team receives a D tier ranking. Moving on to the more positive phase of this transmission, we take a look at the second best team in the Goddess Tag League. The second best team in this year's Goddess Tag League is the Blue Goddess team of Tam Nakano and Natsupoi, otherwise known as Meltier. This is slightly awkward since Natsupoi currently holds the Goddess titles alongside Saori Ano, not Tam. With that being said, as Red Belt champion, Tam Nakano sits comfortably in S tier, while Natsupoi remains in B tier, the Goddess tier. Splitting the difference, we have ourselves a team that easily secures an A tier ranking, but not quite strong enough, because there is one team that looks even better this year. The best team in this year's Goddess Tag League is the Blue Goddess team of Micah and Megan Bain. This team is very tough to rank because neither woman currently has a belt around their waist, and this means we have to assess them almost solely through their booking. With only a few losses on her 2023 resume and multiple wins over Utami Hayashishita, I'm placing Micah in A tier. She's never held the white belt, but she regularly has been able to give former red belt champions a run for their money. I'm not fully up to date, but unless I'm missing something, Micah's only actual losses this year have been to Julia and Momo Watanabe. That is very, very impressive. I've also assigned an A-tier ranking to Megan Bain, who from what I can remember has taken only one pinfall since joining Stardom and is rarely even in trouble against the vast majority of the roster. She is the definition of OP, which means we shouldn't expect this team to get beaten by much of the opposition. A count out here, a DQ there, these things are possible. But when your weakest link has only lost to 2 people all year, you are in a damn good spot. I'm looking forward to covering more of the Goddess Tag League as we get closer to its launch date. I've already assigned tier rankings to all of the teams involved, so I may be sharing those rankings in the future. Which teams have you the most excited for this year's Goddess Tag League? If you found this transmission valuable, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment to let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to Red Belt Radio.